I have a few questions about the Porsche Macan S, but the most important one is this. Is it sporty enough to replace my Porsche Boxster, such that if I ditch my Japanese SUV, the Macan could service both my sports car and my family car? Despite the number of outstanding sports cars you can buy today, sedans, hatchbacks, coupes and convertibles, it seems that the world wants more and more SUVs and pickups, or utes as we call them in Australia. This has created something of a genetic mutation where these once practical, robust, high-riding vehicles have morphed into fast, sporty machines that dance on the edge of conflicting design and engineering principles, just so Mr. and Mrs. Smith can have their cake and eat it too. The Porsche Macan S is one such vehicle. And so when Bobby and I set out for a day of freeway, B-road, mountain road and gravel driving, I had three questions. The first of which I already posed, but the other two were, can it be practical, comfortable and sporty? And number two, does it feel like a real Porsche despite its practicality? In other words, is it Porsche enough? You know, whenever I collect my son from school, the car park is always stuffed full of BMW M's, AMGs, Porsches and Audi RSs, and almost every one of them is an SUV. Teslas probably make up the remaining 50% of the car spaces. So it would seem, from this sliver of Western society anyway, that you don't just need an SUV, but an SUV with at least 250 kilowatts with which to transport your precious cargo to and from school. This handsome beast actually packs 280 kilowatts and 520 newton meters of torque from its 2.9 litre twin-turbo V6, which hurls its 1,883 kilograms of metal, rubber and leather down the road like it's escaping a pack of Tesla Model Ys. Contrast this with my 981 Boxster, which has a puny 195 kilowatts and 280 newton meters of torque carrying 1,321 kilograms. Now that disparity in power is significant, but when you take weight into consideration, it's almost exactly 148 kilowatts per tonne for both vehicles. It's 148.7 for the Macan and 147.6 for the Boxster. The Macan S, however, does feel significantly quicker, sprinting from 0 to 100 in just 4.8 seconds versus 5.7 for the Boxster. That's thanks to the huge torque advantage that you get when you bung a pair of turbochargers between the V of a V6 engine, meaning that the Macan S has 276 newton meters per tonne, whilst the Boxster has to make do with just 211. Now, fair enough, this is a Macan S versus a base Boxster, so if you've got the Boxster S with its 232 kilowatts and 360 newton meters of torque, that would bring the 0 to 100 time down to 5 seconds, just 0.2 of a second off the Macan S. Okay, so let's get back to my first question about the Macan. Can it be practical, comfortable and sporty? Let's start with practicality. Now, the answer to that question is probably obvious. After all, it seats 5 bodies. It has 453 litres of boot space, which expands to 1,468 with the back seats folded, and it'll tow a pair of jet skis, motorbikes, or a small boat with its 2,000 kilogram towing capacity. So on those metrics alone, yes, it's fairly practical. It's not without its foibles though. The touchscreen infotainment system is fiddly, with what I would describe as less than intuitive navigation. There's no Android Auto, only CarPlay. There's no wireless charging, and no visible USB ports because they're tucked away in the little center console bin between the two front seats. And if you have anything bigger than a standard size iPhone, like my iPhone 14 Pro here, which can sit awkwardly in the center console, then you're going to need to stick your phone in a cup holder or on a windscreen or dash-mounted phone holder separately. There's no other spot to put it. And speaking of space, the room in the second row is pretty tight as well. Yes, it'll fit 3 at a pinch, but knee room, foot room and headroom are all a bit ordinary, so it might be a little bit claustrophobic for long trips. A major gripe for me though is that the center console, lo and behold, is almost all touch-based, which means you actually have to look at the buttons there on the center console to use them, which to me is just madness in a moving vehicle. So if you approach a bit of road that lends itself to sportier progress, then you're going to need to probably stop and look away from the road, press 2 buttons on the console, 2 or 3 times each, depending on what settings you want for suspension and gearbox. And it's the same thing with the ventilation, the lane keep assist and the seat heating controls. I just don't understand this obsession with touchscreen everything. It's getting quite out of hand, in my opinion. Okay, so moving on to comfort. Comfort means a lot of things, so let me break it down like this. The seats are fabulous. They're soft, they're supple, they're supportive, and they have plenty of width for broad bums and shoulders, which is not something that I can say about the seats in the Boxster or the Cayman, which tend to grip a little bit too tight around the shoulder blades. The driving position is easy to configure with tons of seat and wheel adjustment, so it's not hard to get a comfortable seating position. And the suspension tune, especially in the comfort setting, is plush, but chatter from the 21-inch P0s is an ever-present thing through the steering wheel. You feel it pretty much everywhere. It's not really intrusive, but you feel it. I've driven the base 2-litre model of the Macan, and the ride on its 19-inch wheels with higher profile rubber was significantly better, positively cosseting. Visibility isn't great. A head check either side presents a view mostly filled with headrests and a very thick C-pillar, while the view directly out back is hampered by the low roofline, which affords almost no view above the roofline of the cars behind you. The Cayman has the same issue. If you want to see more at the back, then you might have to drop the driver's seat down a bit. All right, so how sporty is it? This is the real question. Oh, there's no aircon on, that's why.
What's that?
The aircon button goes off every time you get back in the car. Really feel like I'm driving a giraffe. Just been a bit of wind through here. It's definitely possible to have some fun on a twisty mountain pass. The steering has a nice weight to it and has plenty of feel through its thinnish rim to know what its front end is doing, while the fat Pirellis and the well-damped suspension do a pretty good job of directing the vehicle exactly where you point it. A very good job, actually. There's no escaping the fact, though, that you're riding higher than you would in a dedicated sports car. So while it might be hugely capable, the feeling is very different thanks to that extra weight and the higher center of gravity. There's no getting away from physics. The real excitement, I reckon, comes from the way the drivetrain catapults you from corner to corner, whether you let the excellent Audi-derived but Porsche-fettled 7-speed PDK do its own thing, or shift manually via the steering wheel mounted paddles. It's especially laugh-out-loud fast from a standing start, with the suspension setting comfort as it squats down on its springs with the nose skyward like it's just been tasered in the rear. It sounds gorgeous too. It's got a angry enough but refined sound from its quad exhaust system. Okay, so on to the final question. Is the Macan S a real Porsche despite its practical SUV design? More specifically, is it Porsche enough to replace my Boxster and my current SUV so that I go from 2 cars down to 1? Yes to the first and no to the second. At least for me anyway. You see, even though the Macan is a product of the Volkswagen Group, meaning it shares components with Audi, it certainly isn't a rebadged SQ5. From what I understand, it shares about 25% of the components with the Audi equivalent. The car is built exclusively at Porsche's Leipzig factory in Germany alongside the Panamera, while many of its chassis, engine and gearbox components and calibrations differ from the Audi products significantly. And that's why it goes and steers and stops like a Porsche. All the interior components feel good to the touch, Everything's nicely weighted and well screwed together, just like you'd find in a 911, a Boxster or a Cayman. So for someone coming to the brand for the very first time, and really the Macan, more than any other Porsche model, fills that role to a T. That's its objective, really, is to bring buyers into the fold. For those buyers, they can expect something special. There's no doubt about it. They will notice a difference in how the car looks and drives, and most importantly, how it makes them feel. Is it Porsche enough to be a sports car and a family hauler? I guess that's the $64 million question. And for some, the answer is absolutely. It'll waft through city traffic in quiet comfort, yet still excite the senses on a twisty ribbon of tarmac. It'll even take you down a dirt track with consideration to tyres and ground clearance and those sorts of things, and it'll do it with relative ease. It even has hill descent control. Doesn't have low range though, like the Cayenne. It's not as off-road as that model, but it will get you to your cabin hideaway at the end of a long dirt track if you take the necessary precautions. The Macan, and especially this Macan S, offers a sufficiently Porsche DNA-infused entry into the marque, replete with quality components, driver-focused on-road behaviour, and the feeling of owning something a little bit special. For existing brand owners, I think it is the perfect compromise Porsche that allows them to trade their sports car for a family-friendly alternative, especially when they have a new young family that they're growing, while still retaining enough sports car performance to feel that they're not really compromising as much as they'd first feared. For those who appreciate quality, and especially for the drivers amongst us, the Macan S is, in my opinion, the Goldilocks sporting SUV. For those of you interested in the photography side of my channel, here are a couple of photos of the Macan S that I shot while we were out for the day. These were shot with my new Hasselblad X2D with the, I think most of them were shot with the 45p, maybe one or two with the TT Artisan 90mm f1.25 manual focus lens. Hope you enjoy those. Hope this was useful. If you enjoyed it, please do give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, feel free to give it a thumbs down, whatever floats your boat. And if you want to see more of my videos about cars, then just have a look up here. If you want to see more photography videos, just have a look here. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye.